Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I am so excited that you are joining us for this Skillshare envelopes and labeling class. I am Rebecca Newbern. I am the founder of the Seed Library Network, as well as the co-founder of the Richmond Grows Seed Lending Library. And this class is all about envelopes and labeling. I am super excited that we have Josie from Seed Savers Exchange and Julia Dakin from Going to Seed helping us out with the chat. And Julia also is involved with the Hoka Kadele library that is featured here as on our front slide. So we'll also have an opportunity for her to say a little bit about her project at the end. So remind me, Julia. Okay. Oops. So first off, I want to give a big shout out to the Hudson Valley Seed Company that used to be called the Hudson Valley Seed Library. They were generous enough to sponsor this class. As you may know, that the Seed Library Network, we offer all of our classes and resources for free. We're really committed to access and accessibility. And so we really appreciate just their partnership as well as all the beautiful and wonderful work they do in the world. My house is blessed with lots of gorgeous artwork. Some of it is from them, including some of their beautiful art seed packs. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for all the work they do in terms of regional seeds and sustainability and promoting seed library work. So this class is going to be around an overview just of what are some of the best practices, and then also just what some inspiration. So you may be in very different places in your journey in terms of whether you're open or you've been open for a while. Richmond Grows has been open for 14 years, and on Monday we met and we just did a complete revisioning of how our library is going to look. So there's always a time to reflect and see the direction that you want to go. And once again, this just might be planting some seeds about some future endeavors, or if you're getting started, it might just give you some ideas about best practices that other people are doing. Once again, if you haven't already introduced yourself, take a moment to kind of put your information in the chat so we can kind of see who you are. And then also if you've been open for a while or just planning on opening. Once again, you are going to receive this presentation. You'll receive a recording of it. It might be this recording or one of the other classes. You'll also receive the slideshow and then kind of the resources that are mentioned in this. And once again, it'll happen sometime this week because I'm going to do it after I finish all 3 classes. We're going to start with just, do you pack seeds? So there's different ways to go about offering seeds. Some people pre-pack the seeds. Others do self-serve. Some have a mix. Have you experimented with one or the other? What worked, what didn't? So we're just going to give you a little bit of time to kind of put in the chat your practice so you can kind of see what other people are doing. While you're typing, I'll say a little bit about what Richmond Grows does and the choices that we made. We decided to go completely with self-serve. And the reason we chose to go self-serve is I was looking at the Berkeley Ecology Center's seed library. That's Basil. That's the one that inspired our work. And sometimes they had a lot of volunteers. Sometimes they were a little bit more fallow. And I just figured, as someone who works full-time, once again, this is all volunteer work, being able to have something where I didn't have to then monitor people getting stuff packed, I just was like, that will be a lot more sustainable for me and for the organization in general. So we decided to go self-serve, but there are definitely pros and cons to that. So just kind of curious about what other people are saying and thinking. So what were some of the things, Julia, that, let's see, what are some of the things saying? We provide envelopes and seed saving info. It's self-serve. Let's see, we repack all the seeds. We pack all the seeds. Okay, we repack. So there's a lot of repacking. Okay. Yeah, so a lot of pre-packing going on. And once again, there are pros and cons to all of it. So we're going to talk a little bit. Yes, a lot of pre-packs, a lot of pre-packs. So we're going to kind of go through some of the pros and cons and just to kind of give people some thoughts. Pre-pack seeds. Obviously, you get control over the quantity of seeds. So you know this amount is going to create X number of packets. A lot of times people have packing parties and that builds community. Right after the class, someone was mentioning they had a packing party and 8 people showed up and the conversation was really rich around packing and connecting. So that is a wonderful way to build community and connection. You also get to decide what information goes on those packets. So you know that when people leave with the packets, they have the information that you want them to have. However, as you know, it takes time, whether it's staff or volunteer time, to kind of coordinate all that and get that going. So that's kind of a downside of that. Self-serve, obviously easier to manage. We just have, at Richmond Grows, we just have a bunch of jars, and it's all just like take out of the jar what you need, which is a lot easier to manage, but people sometimes take more than we would want. And so supplies might go quicker. And then people might just write lettuce. And, in 3 years, or next year, maybe they go to plant the lettuce and it has a low germination rate. But if they had written down that it was already a 2-year-old lettuce, they would have known that it was probably because the lettuce was too old at that point. So there's pros and cons to that. Jars, we are a big fan of jars at Richmond Grows. We started in envelopes, and then one year it was during the winter time, it was raining. People weren't going into the library because it was wintertime, it was raining. And about a month later, I got an email from someone saying, are you aware there are mice all over the collection? And they ate through everything, like everything got eaten, like everything except for one squash. After that, so we moved to 100%, or mostly, except for a couple of donations, we are all in glass jars at this point. So that can reduce the risk of damage from insects or rodents. Easy to restock. So for example, I have a jar like this at the library, and then I can kind of see, oh, it's going, we're running low, and I have back stock in my house, and then I can just go and I can easily just pour some more seeds into the jar. As noted, people might take more, so supplies might go quicker. People might not put quality information. But one of the solutions we have to that, making sure people have quality information, is we will sometimes print out the information ahead of time so that they have what we want them to have. So this one has the species name, the common name, the grower's name, location, year, information about the plant, how many seeds it was saved from, and then a little note like take a pinch, 1 seed equals 1 plant. So they have a sense of appropriate volumes to take. We also, if you can see on here, we have a little stamp that says crossed, because some species, and actually even some families, cross-pollinate really readily, and it's hard for us to ensure when we have community saved seed that it's going to come out true to type. So we just put crossed, and most people are fine with just having mustard and aren't super concerned about the variety. So that's just kind of a strategy you can use to have these little stamps. And you can see on the right-hand side, this is just one of our jars. So we have the common name, and then it's actually the common and scientific name, or part of it, another name for the year. And then we also have the information on the top of the container. And the reason we do that is when we go and we open our drawers up, it also makes it very easy when we go at the end of the year to look at older stock and say, oh, that seed's a little bit older. Maybe we either need to do a germination test or we need to compost at that point. And I will give you a viability chart so you can see and look through your collection to see what makes sense in terms of how long seeds are good for. Okay. And I see the question about that Josie put out about, has anyone else utilized jars and where do you source them from? You can see most of these are just recycled jars. We also use spice jars. So spice jars are perfect little size. And then for the library, one of our library, the old library card catalog ones, it's super short, and we have baby food jars in there, and that is our spice collection. So our spice collection is in baby food jars. Let's see if anyone else has some ideas about where they come up with their jars. Okay. So pack and management tips. We would love to hear, and it seems like a lot of people do pack. How do you manage them? Oh, someone says they have spaghetti jars. Great. So if you pack seeds, and it seems like most of you that are open do pre-pack seeds, how do you manage the process? Do you have like some written up document that you have, or you just bring people together? Like, how much do you tell people to put into the different seeds? What are some of the things that people do when you have a packing party? And is there some way when one librarian leaves and someone else takes over that that information isn't lost as someone leaves? I started saving jars at home before I knew it was a ton. I was also thinking of asking patrons to donate. So we ended up repacking, at least for now. Okay. Great. So I'm just waiting for some ideas on packing. When I first, so during the pandemic, we did a lot of packing, and I had a sheet about what needed to go in each of them. We were doing a bunch of different things, which was we were stamping. So this was just like a Richmond Grows stamp. We have them in English and Spanish, telling people where to get more information about growing tips, because we were just putting out massive quantities of seeds. That first year, we put out 20,000 seed packets during the pandemic. And then we also had people use these little self-inking stamps. That was some of the things that we did, but I had a sheet that I gave to every volunteer. So just kind of, I wrote a document, typically would have communicated word of mouth. Great. And so if someone has a document that they share with people, we would love to see that. Obviously, you can take out any personal information, but it's just really nice to have that information if you want to share that with us. And you can do that at hello@seedlibrarynetwork.org. Okay, and for people coming in late, just wanted to remind you that we are going to be offering a copy of this recording, and we'll also get a copy of this presentation and also any resources that we are sharing. Another question that we want to just see where people are coming from is, where do you get your envelopes? And then have you found some envelopes are better than others? When we first started, we had like a budget of 0, and we were just using any used envelopes that people had. That really didn't work well in the long run, especially for smaller seeds. So we did kind of switch over, but just kind of seeing what people do in terms of their labels. So some people are saying print labels for every variety. I've written up and photo annotated. And I'm going to have maybe Julia or Josie, if you can kind of maybe at the end give us some of the highlights, because it's trying to keep track of it's a little hard on my side. Or questions. Okay, so and Julia or Josie, do you want to kind of say some of the things that people were writing down in the chat?
Yeah, sure. So a few people are getting them from Amazon, a lot of 2 1/4 by 3.5 inch coin envelopes, and tiny Ziploc bags, and that's about it. Mostly coin envelopes.
Yeah, and I just hit a button, went too fast. Okay. Okay, yeah. So let's see some of the things that we put out after the census, and hopefully you have had your seed library. If you're open, you put yourself on the seed library map. If not, that is bit.ly/seed census. That's bit.ly/seed census to get yourself on the map. And after we put out the census, we had people who had offered different resources, and we went around and had people fill in an Airtable form for us, telling us where they were getting different envelopes and stuff. So some of the places were mentioned here, such as Amazon, but other people used Uline, Office Depot, Staples, local stores. So these are just some of the places. And then we're going to just kind of go through some of the examples that people have. For example, Pima County uses those mini labels, and they're able to fit on all that information, the species name, if that's in an advanced species to save the seeds from, the scientific name, the variety name, they put it in Spanish as well. And then also just a reminder that you need to check out the seeds and the growing season for their area. And all of their seeds are part of their card catalog system. You can check them out, but there aren't any fines in terms of there's no expectation to return them. And then, yeah, so coin envelopes, there's a lot of price difference on coin envelopes, so it's well worth it looking around to see what works best for you. There are people that use the small plastic bags that are resealable. There are pros and cons that I tend to find when I put plastic bags, sorry, seeds in anything plastic. If it gets hot, there's a lot of moisture in it. And then obviously there's a concern about plastic, but they are cheaper. So that is a consideration in that point in terms of that. And same thing with the biodegradable. It's nice to think about biodegradable. It is somewhat of an issue in many municipalities that things that are labeled as biodegradable, like forks and all, take too long to biodegrade in the time frame that the municipalities have to compost stuff, and hence they're actually considered contaminants. Even though they're technically biodegradable, they're not biodegradable in the time frame. So I'm not sure about the plastic bags, the biodegradable envelopes, but it's something to ask around before you invest in that, thinking you're doing something more environmentally sustainable. Label, label, label. That is the mantra in seed saving. It goes with what goes on the envelope. It also goes when you go seed saving. I have had numerous times when I've had tomatoes, and then I'm like, I do not remember which tomato that variety that was. Something to think about. Once again, there's lots of different options in terms of, you can do the printable ones that you just saw with Pima County. This is what we did, and I know it's blurry because I cannot tell if it's blurry or not. I cannot change the settings right now. But so we have like just something that was given, that we bought at a local rubber stamp company, and it has, all the scientific information, the variety, year grown, and then also, easy, difficult to save seeds from, in the quantity, and then also our website address. So that's one thing, but don't forget also to get the extra ink and a big ink pad. Once again, for people that are coming in at different times, you will be getting the video of this, you'll be getting the presentation of this, and then any resources that we're mentioning, we will also send that sometime in the next week. Other things that you could think about, as I mentioned, are kind of these stamps this one has Richmond Grows, seeds.org, and then it's in Spanish, visit to obtain more information on planting instructions. And then these are the ones I was talking about where you can just kind of put the information. These were great when you just have to do a lot of information. So this says beans and then frijoles, and then has the, what do you call it? The variety name. This was when we were during the pandemic and we were giving out tons and tons and tons. I would also add to this the year, so that you know that if it's been around for more than a couple years, then you might want to discard it. Another one of the stamps, we have a bunch of these little stamps, and one of those ones is poisonous, toxico, and we use this for sweet peas, so someone doesn't actually put sweet peas or take sweet peas home thinking that they can eat them. We have the crossed one, as I mentioned earlier, so this is crossed, and then we also have one that says rare, please save these seeds. I would like to get another little stamp like this that says super easy to save, so that we can get people thinking about, oh, I can take that next step. And then you can just see some examples from our cold climate and seed library in Fernie, and there's one from Richmond Grows. And is there anything, Julia or Josie, in the chat that you want to kind of highlight?
There's a few people that have made have a lot of handmade envelopes, which sounds really cool. So any designs for those, it'd be interesting to see a link, because I know other people are interested.
And along with that, when I send out the resources, the video and the other resources, there's going to be a link to the Airtable where we collected all this information from people in the community. So if you have something interesting that you would like to share, such as pictures of your handmade envelopes, we would love to include those in our resources to kind of highlight through social media and on our website. So please consider adding to the collection so people can see and be inspired by what you're doing. Envelope information. When you are thinking about your envelopes, whether you're creating a stamp or you're printing something out, kind of the bare minimum is to have the common name, the variety name, and the year harvested. And that just helps people if they want to go and find more information online, or how to plant it or anything like that, or specifics about it, they have that. And if they have issues with germination, they have a sense about how old the seed is. And maybe it's not, the seed's only a year old. So maybe that wasn't the issue. Maybe it was a watering issue. Where if it's a little bit older seed and it didn't germinate, they might realize, oh, maybe the seed isn't viable anymore. Some other things that you might want to consider putting on the envelope is how long does it take to grow? Uses, for example, is this great for dehydrating? Growth habit. I have gotten things at swaps and I thought it was a bush bean and it ended up being a pole bean. So I was a little bit surprised and it wasn't quite the appropriate space. Those are important things to include as well. A description just about like, is this a cherry tomato? Is this a yellow tomato? Is this a hot pepper? Things like that, or just other things just about the height of the plant and things like that can be super helpful. Planting instructions as well, scientific names, especially when it comes to the native plants, having that information is additionally helpful. Nice to also have an opportunity to promote your logo and your website. Those are also things to consider. And then we'll also talk about and share some ideas of ways you can level up. For example, the seed saving information. I think, yes, I have one here. So on this one here, we have a little star that says super easy. And then I say tomatillas are super easy to save. And then I go in through all the instructions about how to save them. And it's right on the container. And then also when people take out the little piece of paper, it has instructions about the purple keeper modern landrace. And then it also has the information about how to save it so they can have some for themselves for next year and share with other people. Another thing you might want to consider is if you have something interesting, you could have a QR code. You can also have a QR code to your website that might have additional information. And I'll show you some examples of how people have done that, stories, recipes, and then germination rate. So we're going to go now we're going to go into kind of examples of some of these things. Anything in particular, Josie or Julia, that you want to kind of highlight at this point? Because I see there's lots of messages coming in.
Are you going to talk about tracking and recording number of envelopes that go out? There's a few questions.
A little bit, yeah. And I'll
Okay.
share some of the resources that came in since the last class have some of that information. So that will be one of the resource pieces that I include in the email. So this is one group in Birmingham, and they just have kind of reused, because people are talking about where do you source jars. So they just reused microcentrifuge tubes and have the labeling on where they got it from. And then the variety and all there is on there. The species is also on there. And this group in New South Wales, Australia, they have a special printer that does really nice envelope printing. And so you can see that they have the species, they have the variety, they have the scientific name. They talk about it's a sweet pepper, heavy cropper, uses, when to plant it, a little bit about, transplanting it and the season. So those are some things if you have, a little bit more organization to your system that you can consider doing. This group here from Auburn Hill, they used Canva to design theirs. So they have a really attractive design. And then this person uses a Cricut design space program to kind of get their envelopes already. And then you can see some of the other things that they included on their envelope was, is it organic or not? Is it open pollinated or an heirloom? So those are some nice things to consider when you're also creating your envelope labels. This one from Greenville, I thought was very interesting. I hadn't seen anything like this, which is a very visual planting times guide, because a lot of the things that don't get on the envelopes that get shared out through seed libraries is planting instructions. And this was a nice visual about when to plant it, spacing, does it require full sun, part sun, is it okay in shade, the planting depth and all of that. And then on the right, you can see the one from the native seed sorry, the native plant here from Sacramento. And they have a little bit about the planting depth, when to plant it, and stuff like that. So that's, and the picture is obviously nice so that people know what they're getting. And as I was talking about, you might want to level up. So any tips for creating envelope labels, designs? As noted, a couple of people did some really nice ones in Canva. And Julia, where did you, do you know who did the Hokokadele one that we had on?
Yeah, I do those in Canva, and
You
then I
did it.
use Avery. Yeah,
Okay, yes.
I'm curious what other people are using.
Yes, it's gorgeous. They're all of the ones that they put out are. And as I said, we are very simple. We're just printing, like I have a black and white printer, and we're kind of low budget, high impact Richmond Grows. That's that's what I say. We're low budget, high impact organization. And I pretty much just print on paper and stick everything in the jars. When I wanted to give more information, I created a QR code. So a few years ago, one of my neighbors had some really pretty Love in the Mist or Nigella from her grandmother, and it turns this really pretty pink as it gets older. And what I did was I went and I just did an audio recording of her talking about her grandmother and this plant, and then put a QR code on the packet so people have a little bit more sense of, because it's, a lot of us are very disconnected from the seeds and the food we grow and the plants in our garden, whether they're flowers or whatever, and having this story really helps people kind of connect and want to preserve it and share it. And then this other group in Oregon put stickers on just, to show whether it's easy or difficult. And they have a key in their library so people know that that green doesn't mean it's easy to plant, but it's easy to save the seeds from. So that's a kind of a nice idea. And someone who was in our last meeting said they do a similar thing, but they just take a marker and say green, easy, yellow, and kind of red or orange. I can't remember what they said. And then here's another one that has a lot of different pieces in it. One, you can see they have this local donation sticker that they use. There's a master gardener or master gardeners involved in this one in North Carolina, and they included the germination rate. They included an expiration or a kind of discard date. And then they also had information about if you needed more information, they had a master gardener phone number and email that you could contact. And then they come with these more detailed planting instructions as well. So I thought that was a nice kind of add-on that they provided. And then another one, this is a native plant library in Cranford, New Jersey, and nice picture that they included, the common name, the scientific name, the color of the bloom, the height of the plant, which is really nice because sometimes natives can be very variable in their heights. And then this was an interesting piece, which is if you were dealing with natives in particular, having information about the germination specifics. For example, cold stratifying. If you plant a cucumber in the ground, it's fine. But with a lot of the natives, they might need scarification or cold stratification in order to germinate. And having that information included is going to really help people have more success with the plants that they have. And then also the soil moisture, sunlight, and then a little bit about collecting. They also included, instead of having a QR code, they had a bit.ly code, and then it takes to this native plant site so that people can learn more about that specific plant as well as kind of explore other natives. And then this is another group that was also featuring a native plant. So they talked about it's a perennial, which was also helpful information to include how many seeds were in the packet, full sun, the height of the plant, spacing, and then once again, explain that it needs cold stratification. So that's a lot of information so far. Any pieces, Julia or Josie, that you want me to explain or anything that you saw that you wanted to share out?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, so level up, level up. This is impressive leveling up. One of the things that came in, and as I mentioned, at the end of this class, we're going to send you an email with the presentation, with the recording, with all the resources. One of the resources we are going to include is a link to this auto wrapper and the video of how to do the auto wrapper. So this auto wrapper was created by Braden Richland. And what it does, so if you have gotten into having to make multiple labels, over time, you have a lot of different things and trying to manage that. Like I have so many, I have a folder for fava beans and I have a folder for peas and I have tons and tons of different envelopes. What he's done is he has put that all just on a spreadsheet. So this is a brilliant idea. And so you can kind of say the plant type, is it a native plant or a food crop? And then, so he's just giving us one example, yarrow, giving it the scientific name, and then they have all this information and you're going to get a copy of this and then you can customize it to however you want. And then it will print out the envelope just on paper. So it'll just be a piece of paper. I'll show you on the next slide. And so this is what will happen when, for that example, the yarrow. So so this dotted line is where you would fold, and then the black lines are where you're going to cut. So your envelope would have yarrow, the scientific name, sun, it's an edible medicinal, germination code A. So they must have that somewhere, what that means. So at the surface, so all this information. So this is a lot more information than most seed libraries put on prepackaged envelopes. And it's a press of a button. And they have an 8.5 by 11 version and 11 by 17 version. So you can get a little bit more on obviously the larger paper. So this is a game changer in terms of making labels. I think gluing, it takes a bit of time. One thing you might want to just consider instead of gluing is just taking it, wrapping it, and stapling it. The other suggestion on this is we have made a modified version of this that we're playing with, and I'll show you that right now. So this is the modified version. So it's just a one-page thing. And instead of having that front back, we are putting in a QR code. And so this QR code, this one is to Richmond Grows, but we'll make one that goes to the Seed Library Network and it has specific planting instructions in terms of spacing. It's not going to have the time of the year because it's too variable, because we have people in the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere in our network, as well as East Coast and, Michigan and Georgia have very different planting times. But that's a way to go. So we will also give you the modified seed wrapper, which is just a one front page thing. And once again, you could glue it on, but I just know when I've glued stuff on, sometimes stuff gets glued together. So stapling might be an easy way to go, but this is just a great idea in terms of being able to quickly print out. And then the nice thing is you have it for next year and it's all in one location. So kudos to Braden. And I think the other thing I really want to say is this is a community effort. The work in the seed library, it's really grown because of the generosity of people in the community sharing best practices, asking each other what they're doing, how they're doing it, and kind of learning and growing together. So if you take this and do something with either the auto wrapper or the modified seed wrapper, we would love to see examples of what you've created, because other people are going to super benefit from it. So just keep us in mind, either send us an email at hello@seedlibrarynetwork.org, or, fill in that Airtable to share with you what you've done. And once again, we're going to have the QR code that goes to seedlibrarynetwork.org, but you are welcome to take any of the information we put on our website and put it on your own website. We do not need to be credited for it, but we always appreciate it, but it is not a requirement to share any of our resources. Okay. Anything so far? Because that was a big, any other questions at this point?
Not from the chat.
Okay, not from the chat. But that was like, when I saw that, I was like, what? That's so amazing. And I really, at this point, I also want to give a big shout out to Sam Lieberman. So Sam Lieberman was one of our 2 interns, and we will send you the interview that she did with Braden that walks through this whole process. It's also linked. Oopsie daisy. It's also linked here. So this is the interview with Sam that Sam did with Braden. So you'll have access to that. And then I also want to give a big shout out to Malia, who was also our other intern, and she and Sam together kind of pulled all of these resources together on the Airtable. And then Norris Seed Library they have this editable Word template. So you can see this stuff in uh, purple is the stuff that they're typing onto. So they have like this format thing, and then they can just kind of type onto it and print it from there. I love what this person was saying, so I decided to put it in here. So although a rather intensive process, all seeds in our library are cataloged in a Google Sheet spreadsheet. You can see that over here, and this is visible. And once again, you'll have the link to it so you can see it later. That can be viewed on our website with up-to-date envelope availability. This way, borrowers can see what we have in stock before stopping by or while in the library by scanning the QR code above the drawer full of seeds. This system would probably not work as well for a larger library with no dedicated staff, as the inflow and outflow of seeds would be faster than one could catalog and package them. But I just thought this was just kind of a nice, once again, you can kind of see they have the variety, how many seeds are in stock, was it library purchased or a donation from a company or locally donated, and then also when it was added. So you kind of have all that information, and there's more, it does slide over more so you can kind of see all of the fields that they include. Once again, you don't need to do all of it. You don't, even if you had something that you were excited about and inspired about here, it doesn't need to happen this year. But the idea is that, we're in this group of people, we're all about planting seeds, whether they're the physical seeds or the kind of inspirational ones, to kind of think about where you might want to head at some point with your library. One thing that comes up a lot is how much seeds do we pack? And so this is something we would love to hear from you folks about. Do you have a sheet? Do you have a spreadsheet or a handout or something where when you have your packing parties, you tell people this is how many seeds we want in this envelope, this is how many seeds we want in this type of envelope. That information will really help, new seed libraries, or maybe a library that's been in existence for a while, but the person who was in charge of it left and had it all up here and not on paper. So once again, hopefully you can share some of those resources with us. We kind of created this small design here, which we're happy to, once again, share with the resources that we're sending out, thinking about larger seeds. Best to take as many seeds as you plan on planting this year, plus a couple extras. So if I was doing zucchini and I wanted 2 zucchini plants, I might take 2 zucchini plants. I might take 4 seeds, thinking maybe half of them, get eaten by slugs or one doesn't germinate. And then medium seeds, best to kind of count them out, maybe 10 to 20. Once again, tomatoes, you're not going to need 10 to 20, or cucumbers, you might be like kind of matching how many you want plus a couple extras. And then small seeds, we tend to say take a pinch. And on our envelopes, once again, so here on this, it says, this is mustard, it said take a pinch, 1 seed equals 1 plant. And I often even highlight it to kind of make it more visible because we only have black and white printers. And then the Auburn Seed Library, so I'm going to be sharing their resource with them. They actually have a spreadsheet saying zucchini, this is how many seeds we pack. And then and this is something that is often done in small seed companies as well, is you can get a set of different sized teaspoons up to like a 1/64 of a teaspoon. You can even buy I want to buy 5 1/64 teaspoons. So when I have a packing party, you've got lots of people with the same size teaspoons. And then just kind of okay, this one gets 1/64 of a teaspoon. This one gets 1/32 of a teaspoon. So that's something you can have along with kind of a spreadsheet or a handout. And then another consideration in terms of quantity of seeds to pack. Obviously, if the seed's a little bit older, you might say something like lower germination rate, pack extra. Once again, I'm going to be sharing with you the seed viability chart that tells you by species. Here's, let's say leeks, and within a year, the viability rate goes down significantly. So it tells you how long the seeds are probably good for, and that helps you kind of know whether to overpack or whether you even need to take it out of your collection altogether or do a germination test, better yet. And then obviously, if you have a lot of seeds of something, maybe you're a little bit more generous. If you have a little bit less or something's a little bit rarer, I know that when we were in the beginning of the pandemic and all of our seeds were locked up in the library and we had to buy seeds, we were not as generous as we were with the seeds because we needed to make sure okay, we're gonna get four zucchini plants, you know, 4 zucchini seeds. That's all you get. That is plenty for a family. Make them count. So, you know, you might want to be thinking about how much you know, the demand and how much you have in stock when you're making those decisions. So I can see that some people, I have a spreadsheet that I found on the internet about how much to put in. Great. So if you could share that with us at hello@seedlibrarynetwork.org, we would love to share that out. Great. And then someone else talked about we try and consider genetic diversity and how many seeds we will put in a plant to save the seeds from. If you really are having people saving seeds and you really are encouraging that, being able to give them minimum population size plus a little bit extra is great. That is a fabulous way to go. And sometimes that genetic diversity can be met, at least within a larger community where different people are saving it, and then you pool the seeds together so you know you have a wider selection of genetic diversity. Now, how do people know, especially when your seed packets, you know, are very basic like this, where it just says rutabaga, nabo sueco, which is in Spanish, and American purple top, you know, on the year, like how do they know how to plant it? Some of the suggestions that people gave us on our Airtable survey was that they have binders. Some of this obviously looks, you know, from websites. Some people, and you could see they just took the Seed Saver Exchange labels and put them right in these things. And once again, big shout out to Josie, who's one of our tech people there, who's from Seed Savers Exchange, helping us out today. And she does the catalog. So she can tell you a little bit more about that at the end. And then this is obviously a great book. If you do not have this book, I'm just going to give a little shout out to Seed Savers Exchange here on this book. The Seed Garden is a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful coffee table book with incredible information about seed saving. And kind of the main author of it was Jared Zystro, who is the education coordinator and kind of scientist at Organic Seed Alliance. So that's another wonderful organization to check out. So if you have these binders of information, this is a great place to where people who need to know about the planting instructions because they don't have it can reference that, or they want to know about what does American purple top rutabaga look like, and they can just go to the original seed packet and get that. And this is going to be our Airtable time. So Julia, actually at this point, let's go back a second. Has anyone any questions that we have in here? No, we got a little shout out for Seed Savers Exchange. Great. And thank you, Josie, for sharing the link to that wonderful, wonderful book. Okay, so I don't see any specific questions at this point. At this point, Julia or Josie, could you share in the Airtable link so that people can kind of see where we were pulling these resources from and that they have access to this information?
Yes.
Great. So all of these images and a lot of the information I was sharing today is from the community. And once again, super grateful to have such a generous community making their, you know, their ideas and their vision visible to all of us. And once again, you can kind of go around and see the detailed responses people had around all the different questions we asked with regards to envelopes and labelings. I'm going to be sending another Airtable probably in a week or so. That's going to help us get ready for the next series of classes, which will be on donation and membership forms. So if you want to kind of just open that up, you can kind of look and see what people are doing. I'm a little scared to press any buttons. Great. So just, I would keep that open because you can just kind of see and just take that and make sure you have that available and you can kind of peruse it a little bit later or ask questions about it. And then we are going to just take a little bit of time to spend the last 15 minutes or so if people have questions, and then we will kind of just answer questions that people have. So at this point, questions that you have, and let's focus originally just on envelopes and labels. And then if we have a little bit more time, we can expand that conversation out to some other topics.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about how people are tracking? There was a bunch of discussion on that topic with little detail.
Yes, and there, so I would say there, it's highly variable. I would say at Richmond Grows, we do zero tracking or close to zero tracking. What I do is, especially because I'm one of the main growers for Richmond Grows. If I have this jar, so this is the Tarahumara Bordal runner bean. So I have a jar in the library and I have a jar at home with backstock. So for me, I'm just kind of seeing running out that, oh, I'm getting lower and this is from 2 years ago and it's getting a little bit older anyway. So I just need to grow more. So it's a very kind of informal process of being like, oh, I need to get someone to grow out the seeds for us because we're running low and it's also getting older. So that's kind of how I do it. We have had people that have wanted to track it, but we have such a large collection that for us to track it and we're all volunteers would just so not work. But there are people, or I shouldn't say people, organizations like the Pima County in Arizona who have 19 seed libraries within their 27 branches. And their seed libraries, and I showed one of the examples earlier in the class, it has a barcode and you can actually do interlibrary loans. So they have a complete tracking system. Some people also just have the spreadsheets, like you saw the one with Norris. So it's a lot of work to track. And so it really depends on like, what are you trying to get out of it? Do you need to have some type of metrics, for grants? Do you have the bandwidth? Do you have like paid time to do it? Or if you're volunteers, it's probably not going to happen as much. So, but that's
And
something.
if those of you who are tracking and want to share how you're doing it exactly, that would be great to hear. So another question, I'm pretty new to
One last
caring
thing.
for,
All right, sorry, one last
um,
thing. Oh, sorry, one last thing. And one of the pieces I'm going to share came in last night from, I can't remember who it was, but they have a tracking sheet about how many envelopes they make, and then each month they're kind of doing an inventory of what's going on. So I'll share that resource so you can see someone else's idea that's not attached to the library system, barcode, but they are doing tracking and monitoring that way. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
so this is from Fiona. I'm pretty new to caring for the seed library. Do libraries rely on donations of seed, or do they sometimes have to buy seeds?
I think at this point there is a full spectrum, and I know you, Julie, were looking at our data recently. There's a lot of, I would say in the beginning when we were first starting, it was a lot easier to get donations because there weren't many seed libraries out there. But now in the United States alone, I mean, there's, probably 1,000+ seed libraries. So it's a little bit harder to get free seed because there's a lot more people trying to get that seed. There are a number of public libraries that are buying seed. And I think the more we can start figuring out how are we going to get people to start saving seeds, that's kind of the direction we need to go because it'll be locally adapted and obviously free. So those are some big, big bonuses to think about. And did you want to add anything about that, Julia, or from the COVID from your
Not necessarily, maybe later. How do you handle people donating seeds back to the library? Are there different labels and tracking systems for that you recommend? That was from Lee.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on you saw that there were a number of different seed libraries that had things like for example, the one from North Carolina, from Dare County, that had a little green sticker that said locally donated. You could have just a stamp, like something like this, that said locally donated. Um, we have a container at Richmond Grows that says, seed donation, so people can put them in there, and then that at least allows us to have our eyeballs on it. For example, sometimes people go through their purchase seeds and they just put all the seeds in there and they're like, you're getting rid of it because it's so old and it's not viable anymore because we're looking at the seed viability chart. I know other times we've had seeds donated where, it was someone just took seeds and scooped them out of a squash and just said like, squash from the supermarket. And I think, you have to you decide about what you're going to accept and what you're not. I would say right now, and same thing with people like with seeds, there are other squash that weren't hand pollinated, and we were like, we don't know who the person is. In the past, we have thrown those seeds out. We're a lot more interested in more genetically diverse seeds, and I will let Julia also address this, but right now the idea of having kind of like pure seed is, first off, what does pure seed mean anyways when we're trying to feed our community? But I think the main thing is really when we are accepting seeds from people is to make sure that we have them labeled correctly. So for example, it's crossed or it might be crossed. So we're a lot more interested in taking those donations, one, to encourage people saving seeds, and two, also to allow the genetics to mix up a little bit more, but then also to be clear with people, the parent was this squash, but we don't know who the dad was, or the mom was the squash, but we don't know who the dad is. And Julia, do you want to say a little bit about the going to seed work at all? Because I think the work you're doing in the world is just absolutely phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal.
Yeah, I can I was gonna say a bit about my local project. That's with Hakakadile, and it's sort of related to how going to seed functions, where this local project started as an adaptation project. So we live in an area that has a really cold summer. Maybe it's some areas in the Bay Area, and a lot of things don't grow very well. So adapting certain things like corn and melons was really a motivating factor. And so from the very beginning, we focused on diversity, sort of embracing diversity. These packets have every different kind of melon you can think of, and that's how we like it. So that's really quite different than I think a lot of other seed libraries have to be. But and I was worried, are people going to hate these packets because they are just, you don't know what you're going to get. And so far it's been a year and a half, and people really haven't objected. They sort of see that and be like, oh, I can have, 20 different tomatoes that come out of this one packet. So that is how we address the sort of community returns, when there's no way we could keep track of all the different varieties of melons or tomatoes, or we just, if your melon grew here and it's delicious and you save the seed, we put it in, our coastal adapted melon. And then we do germ tests, and we separate certain things, and we provide more education. So we're not going to say, all diversity is okay. For example, winter squash in the pepo species and summer squash in the pepo species. So we do a lot of education and workshops around that too. So our project is 100% local seed, and we have to just, in order to get people seeds, we have to make it so easy and provide a lot of education and a lot of resources. And we will, put on workshops where we teach people everything. So that's about that project. And then going to seed has something similar, where the value, we also embrace diversity and adaptation and collaborative seed saving. So you can see that at goingtoseed.org, and there's a seeds tab, and those are all free. Both of the projects I'm working on, the seeds are all free. And recently we've started making people commit to one species that they're going to learn how to save seeds and return back to the seed library. So that's a summary.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Yes, we're and Richmond Grows and Going to Seed are doing a collaborative project with some other local urban ag people here, and it's been just powerful to see the community coming together. And we're stewarding 4 different species in these really diverse mixes, because we also live in a very cold coastal climate with very foggy summers, and being able to try to go melons and different squash. And it's been really fun to see and have the community come together and have those conversations, and also just celebrating and uplifting diversity. I know when I first started Richmond Grows, we were very much into like saving the heirlooms, and there's definitely a super, super important part about that. And also, can we give something to the future that's, you know, um, diverse and kind of opens up that genetic field as well. So there's kind of a yes and kind of playing in here with the seed libraries and what you accept in terms of donations. But it's really about the mantra: label, label, label. And Josie, while we have you here, do you want to also talk, because you've got this amazing work with Seed Savers Exchange and the catalog. Do you want to talk a little about your project, and so people who, I can't imagine many people here are not familiar with Seed Savers Exchange, if they're in the United States at least. But do you want to talk a little bit about that and how people can kind of tap into the catalog and exchange?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, yeah, I'm the exchange coordinator here, and the exchange is really what started Seed Savers Exchange way back in 1975. It was a seed swap among gardeners across the country, and today we have more than 300 seed savers and gardeners, backyard gardeners, educators, and the like who are sharing seeds with one another online and also in our yearly publication called the Yearbook. So if people are interested, they can go to exchange.seedsavers.org, and that's where you can find all those varieties and stories and beautiful descriptions from people who are sharing their saved seed, and also more than 6,000 varieties from the Seed Savers collection, which has been donated to us over the years and is kind of the main avenue for distributing that seed. It's all, yeah, open pollinated seed and can be saved and shared freely. And you just need to cover the cost to pack and ship the seed. So if anybody has any questions, I'll put my email in the chat. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Great. Yeah, and put the exchange website in there too. And it's just amazing because we often, we've outsourced our food to companies, and many of those companies actually happen to be chemical companies. And a lot of the really powerful, the reason why we have the genetic diversity that we still have left is because of organizations like Seed Savers Exchange, where it's the genetic diversity that's going to be saved and even expanded upon by work like what Julia does is going to be done in the communities by and through seed libraries. So the work that you folks are doing in your communities with seed libraries is so, so essential in terms of just biodiversity, in terms of building community, in terms of climate adaptation. It is essential, essential work. So we're so happy that you joined us today. In the last kind of couple minutes, if you could take just 2 minutes to give us feedback on this, let us know how it worked for you. Let us know what you might from today's class take and move forward with. And then also if there's other classes that you would be interested in taking, we would love to get your feedback on that. So just take a moment at that point. How do you do a germination test? I can send a link to that. That would be great. We can do that. I can put that in the emails that I send to people.
And there are a few comments here on seed saving resources and programming and classes, and those are all super important. So another way I was going to suggest to share those was visiting the Seed Library Network forum, Upbeat, which you can find from the website.
And it will be in the email that everyone gets as well. So you'll get a link to, once again, if you haven't joined us on social media, that's something you can also do to keep in touch with kind of some of the latest things that are happening. Once again, people's envelopes that they're sharing out, we are happy to share those out so people can see your examples of your homemade envelopes and your printed envelopes so that people see kind of ideas to be inspired by what you're doing. And anything that we do, you are welcome to use in terms of just our resources are completely free and open source, public domain. All good. Do your seed libraries provide educational programming around seed saving, posters, presentations? We do have some, but I think also, so Josie, it would be great to do some more partnerships with Seed Savers Exchange to offer some more classes. I was also reaching out to Organic Seed Alliance to do similar to see how we can kind of leverage all the expertise that you folks have in your community as well. So I'm at this point, I'm going to stop the presentation and I have to figure out how to stop the video recording.